Hello everyone, greetings from Vancouver. Today I'll be talking about hybridization and the coexistence of species, and this is a collaboration with Dolf Schluter. So we started this by wondering how might a small amount of interbreeding affect the ability of two species to live in the same place. And we were thinking of cases, I don't know, just a random example, maybe the stickleback fish that occur in lakes with a benthic and a limnetic form with a little bit of hybridization between them. And we wondered how much hybridization and what fitness of hybrids would result in maintenance of two species versus collapse of two species maybe into one. A coexistence theory has been developed to understand when species can coexist, and it predicts that two species with different ecological niches should be able to coexist in the same habitat. But this assumes the species are reproductively isolated. Hybridization is very common among closely related species, often for millions of years after they've diverged. So how might interbreeding affect whether two species can coexist? So we developed a model, the HCM-SIM model, hybrid zone with assortative mating, sympatric version, which is an agent-based model of diploid sexual individuals written in R. The starting point is that two populations have just come into full sympatry with no spatial structure. Individuals have a certain number of unlinked loci. In this case, we use 3 loci, each with 2 alleles, a 0 allele and a 1 allele. And these additively contribute to a trait T, ranging from 0 to 1. The starting populations are fixed for different alleles, and we have non-overlapping generations with cycles of mating, reproduction, and survival to adulthood. There are 3 ways the genotypes can affect different phases of the life cycle. The trait can cause assortative mating. The trait can also determine ecological differences between the species that influence their reproductive rates. And genotype can also affect fitness of hybrids. And so briefly, assortative mating is modeled via female preferences for different males. Females are presented with a male, can accept or reject. If reject, then be presented with another one, and so forth. If a male and female perfectly match in their trait, then the female always accepts that male. If they're different in the trait, then her probability of accepting the male goes down the further apart they are. And we express this strength of assortative mating as a ratio of the probability of accepting their own species versus the other starting species. So it's a ratio of those. And strength of assortative mating equals 10 would mean they prefer their own type 10 times compared to the other type. Reproduction is influenced by ecology. So the two starting species can be specialized on different resources, alpha and beta. Each resource has a certain carrying capacity. And intermediates have an intermediate level of competitive ability for each resource. This competitive ability of intermediates is determined linearly, such that the total competitive ability has a flat relationship with the trait. So hybrids have no predefined advantage or disadvantage. Depending on the ecological parameter E, we can make the species range from completely different specialties on the two resources, E equals 1, to E equals 0. The two species both use the same resources in the same way. And finally, low hybrid fitness is expressed with this parameter W_hyb, which means the fitness of F1 hybrids. And partial heterozygotes would have only a partial fitness loss given by the equation in the lower right. So we started with 500 individuals of each population, ran for 1,000 generations, and then looked at the outcome. So I bet you're wanting to know, what do the simulations show? So I'm going to be showing you the results on a graph like this, where we have strength of conspecific mate preference along the bottom, ranging from 1, that means no assortative mating, to 3x means 3 times preference for their own type versus the other, all the way up to 1,000x, and then complete assortative mating, absolutely no interbreeding. And then we have hybrid fitness on the vertical axis, ranging from 0 to 1, full fitness. I'm going to show examples using this figure on the right, where we have generations starting at the start here on the left, and then going along in time, so the generations through time. And HI means the hybrid index. It's equivalent to the trait. So we start, with the 2 parental species. The darkness means the number of individuals in that cell. And so black is lots of individuals, white is no individuals, and gray is something in between. So you see in the first generation leading to the second, we have production of F1 hybrids. In this case, there's no assortative mating and no lower hybrid fitness. So unsurprisingly, the two species, or populations we should say, blend together in that case. Up here we see the population size, and it sort of fluctuates around the combined carrying capacity of alpha and beta. And so for this result, in the upper left of this left graph, we have no loss of hybrid fitness, no assortative mating, we get blending, and we show it with that color there. Okay, let's look at perfect assortative mating. So now jumping over to the right side of this plot on the left, where we have complete assortative mating. Here, we can have two species coexist, but only if they're ecologically different. So here I show a case where they're not ecologically different, E equals 0, and we get stochastic loss of one species over time, simply because they're evolving under the same carrying capacity. And so over time, you randomly lose one species or the other. This is not surprising at all. When you make them completely ecologically different, then we get maintenance of the two species in the long term. And we'll color that in using this yellow color. So when we have complete assortative mating, we get coexistence of two species. This is not surprising, straight out of coexistence theory. But what happens when we have partial assortative mating? Well, here we have SAM equals 10, so they prefer their own type 10 times greater than the other. And it might surprise you that the two species blend together under these conditions fairly quickly. There's no problem with hybrids in this scenario. And so those rare production of hybrid events leads to those hybrids reproducing as well. They can reproduce with each other or backcross, and you get blending of the two populations over not very long. So we'll color that in again with the blending color, that pink color. Let's now add some low hybrid fitness. So now we'll lower hybrid fitness, same conditions otherwise, down to 60%. What happens here is you get this rare hybridization building up of intermediates, all these different intermediate classes. But what's happening is the hybrids have low fitness. The population declines due to this. There's selection then for the two parental genotypes against those intermediate genotypes, and you get the population evolving back towards one of the genotypes, one of the parental genotypes. Which one is kind of random. But it results in the loss of one species. And interestingly, the population then goes from 1,000 individuals to about 500. It has this new carrying capacity of 500 because one of the resources is no longer being used. So you get this loss due to hybridization of one of the species, leaving an empty niche. And we'll color that purple. Now let's reduce assortative mating just a little bit from 10x to 3x in strength. Here, the hybrids are produced at a higher rate than the last example. This means the loss of fitness to the population is greater, and the whole population declines and eventually goes extinct. In other words, the loss of fitness of hybrids and the lack of strong enough assortative mating causes the population to decline, and it can't recover quickly through evolution back towards one of the parental species. And we'll color that black for the extinction. Now we can run each parameter combination 5 times and graph the most common outcome. So now I'm going to fill in all that white space. There you go. That's the whole sort of parameter space under these conditions. And a couple points I want to emphasize. Two species are maintained only when assortative mating is extremely strong. Otherwise, low hybrid fitness leads to extinction of one or both species. Now, interestingly, the exact details of where the boundary is between two species and those other results depends on the intrinsic growth rate. So the ecology here is being modeled with a logistic growth equation that has an intrinsic growth rate in it. And if that's small, then the population can't recover very quickly from those low hybrid fitnesses. And it leads more often to extinction of one or two species. But if the intrinsic growth rate is high, on the right, for instance, you get less of the parameter space where you get extinction, and more of the parameter space where you get either blending, or in yellow, the two species being maintained over time. So just some overall conclusions. Coexistence requires just a little bit of ecological differentiation, but very strong assortative mating. And because it takes so long for related species to evolve full reproductive isolation, we postulate that coexistence of closely related species is more often limited by insufficient assortative mating than by insufficient ecological differentiation. So thank you for coming to my talk, and here are some resources if you'd like to learn more.